Hi everyone, in this video I want to introduce your first major writing project, the rhetorical analysis. Um, so the goal of this assignment is that as you start off in English 300, we're going to focus a lot on what we call arguments and rhetoric. And this first assignment asks you to look at the argument made by someone else and kind of break down their rhetorical choices and think about what makes it an effective or ineffective argument. And so this assignment is kind of designed with that outcome in mind. And so what you're going to be doing for this first writing project is to pick the web presence of a public figure, a business, or an organization, and break down and really kind of think about who the audience is for this web presence, what the goal and purpose is of it, and how it achieves that goal or not. So what I mean by web presence is this could be anything. This could be their website, it could be their Facebook page, their Instagram account, their YouTube channel, kind of whatever you are interested in, you can kind of go with as long as it's for a public business organization or figure, something like that. So it does mean you can't kind of do, your best friend or your grandma or something like that. So if you have questions about what works for a topic, if you're not sure if something kind of qualifies, let me know. You are one of the things I want to note up front is you are only looking at a single web presence. So I don't want you, and you shouldn't be looking at, let's say the American Red Cross's website, Facebook page, Twitter account, Instagram, whatever else they have. You're picking one of those things. Your paper would just be, say, on the American Red Cross's Facebook page or something like that. So, because I want you to focus on this particular space, think about what happens in this space, who they're trying to reach out to, and whether they're effective in doing so or not. So you're going to be analyzing this as a multimedia text. So you're thinking about this as a space where you have written text, you have images, you have video and audio, right? All these different things can come together in a single area and do all this kind of different types of rhetorical work to engage an audience. So, so what you're thinking about is what kind of persona is being presented through this web presence. So, and that can go the same, that's true for whether we're talking about a person or an organization or a business, right? How are they presenting themselves in this space as a, as a company that thrives on success, as a politician who cares about the common person, as a celebrity interested in significant social issues, right? There's all sorts of different ways to present yourself online. So you're thinking about how do they present themselves, who are they reaching out to, and do they succeed at this or not? So you'll notice on the assignment sheet there's a question in italics at the end of the assignment description. This is really what your paper should be answering. The question is, how does the public business, organization, or figure's web presence successfully engage its target audience or not? Right? And so what you're answering in your paper is how it does that, right? And so the whole point of an analysis is that you're pulling out specific examples and elements and breaking those down to kind of explain how the whole operates. So, so what you're doing in this paper, and then what to do, what not to do section is, you're thinking about how the web presence operates to engage with its audience. One of the key things is you're not engaging with it, right? So for this paper, I don't really care at all. And I actually shouldn't really be aware of or know whether you love or hate this person, business, organization, whatever. Your goal is to keep yourself out of it and be an objective voice in this process, right? And you're saying, here's who they're reaching out to, here's whether they're successful in doing so or not, right? So maybe you are a part of the target audience, maybe you aren't. Either way, you shouldn't be engaging, you shouldn't be arguing about what some politician says about gun control, whether you're for it or against it, whatever. This is not the space for that in this paper. So you want to keep that in mind. You want to stay focused on what they're posting and whether it's effective or not. So you are discussing the rhetorical effectiveness, and to that end, you need to be addressing the different rhetorical appeals, which is one of the kind of first things you'll be getting in this unit. Those are ethos, credibility, pathos, emotion, logos, logic, and then kairos as timing or timeliness. So you need to be addressing all of those in your paper, and whether the web presence does or doesn't use them. So one of the things to keep in mind is that nobody really uses all four of these rhetorical appeals equally. A lot of people rely heavily on emotion or logic. A lot of people lean on their credibility, right? So there's usually going to be a different combination. So you want to think about what are the most prominent ones, what are the least prominent ones, and are these problematic or not, right? Maybe for a celebrity, if we don't see a ton of logic, that's not a horrible thing, right? Because the audience isn't expecting lots of information, facts, statistics, things like that. But for a public organization, a nonprofit, for a politician engaged in current issues, right? We expect their research and their information to be up to date, to be credible, things like that. So then logic is pretty important for what they're saying. So, so what you're looking at, and what you want to think about too, is what does the website allow and not allow the business figure or organization to do, right? So there are things you can do on Facebook. You can choose kind of what content you add to your profile. You can't really choose where it goes on the page, things like that. With Twitter, right, you are limited by the 140 characters, so you have to work within that. So these are the things you're thinking about as well, as how do they kind of play into that these different aspects of the technology. How do they use those to their advantage or not? Sometimes they fail miserably at this, and so that's the case as well. So in terms of what's on the profile, you can look at anything that the account owners or runners post. So anything they link to, if they link to an article or anything like that, is fair game. Any videos or images they share, any text they put, you know, you could look at their profile photo, their cover photo, anything that they posted to the page is fair game for this paper. What I don't want you looking at is what other people are saying. So I don't want you, you can talk generally about if somebody makes a post and has 200,000 likes and 50,000 comments, and a lot of them are all super positive. You can kind of mention that generally, but I don't want you identifying individual users and saying so and so from Topeka said this or something like that. So you don't want to bring that kind of stuff into your paper. So your goal is to make sure that you are analyzing. And the difference between description and analysis is that description tells us what we can see. And you want some of that. That is important, right? Especially because your reader may or may not be familiar with the Twitter account, the Instagram account, whatever it is that you're looking at for this paper. But that also means that's only about half of what you're doing. The other half is analysis. And you have to make sure that you are showing us how these examples you bring into your paper exhibit or don't exhibit the different rhetorical appeals. So you can't just tell us that. So a bad model for this paper is a paragraph that has 5 sentences that are all kind of describing what you see on the Facebook page, and then 1 sentence at the end that says, oh, and this is all an appeal to credibility. That is telling us, but that is not showing us how it actually appeals to credibility. So a better paragraph is going to have 2 or 3 sentences of strong description saying, here's what I see, and then 2 or 3 sentences saying, here's how this content establishes credibility or makes an emotional appeal, right? So is it funny? Is it making a joke? Why is that important for this person, right? Is it, is it getting people invested emotionally in terms of, pulling on their heartstrings? Is it serious, right? Is it trying to convey a particular message, right? You need to make sure that you're explaining to your reader how these things operate as examples of the different rhetorical appeals, and not just that they do, right? So that's the big trap that a lot of people fall into, is leaning too heavily on description and not providing enough analysis. So in terms of what you're looking at on the account and the page, like I said, anything is fair game. I do usually give for this assignment about a 6-month cutoff, give or take. And so that's something you want to keep in mind. I think the specific date is on the assignment sheet. You can check it out. But that's just kind of to let you know, I want you to think about more recent activity, right? And part of that is also something you need to keep in mind when picking your topic for this project. So, so I won't go over the assignment goals in depth, but you can look at those, kind of what specifically you're supposed to work on with this assignment. Length and format. So this needs to be the minimum length for the body of the paper should be 1,500 words. Max is approximately 2,000 words. This excludes the title, the MLA header, the works cited page. Those things are required for the paper, but they don't count for or against the word count. The whole paper should follow the formatting guidelines. It should be 12-point times the Roman Calibri, double spaced. It should have 1-inch margins on all sides. You do need to have all of your outside sources cited in the body of the paper and cited on the works cited page. That also includes the web presence you're looking at. So you need to cite as well. You'll have 3 outside sources, and then the Facebook page, Twitter page, website, whatever it is you're looking at and analyzing for the project itself on your works cited page. So I do ask for this paper that you have 3 outside sources, and these sources are really, they shouldn't take too much time, and they really shouldn't be too much of your paper. They're really meant to provide a little bit of context, maybe to help clarify a point for your reader. Really, most of the analysis and almost all the analysis should be you, which is kind of a few moments where you're bringing in your sources. So as it says in kind of the sources breakdown, the sources should be credible and informative, right? So they should be telling us something about the business, the organization, the person, anything like that. These shouldn't be opinion-based pieces, so you don't want to say, oh, so-and-so is for or against this person because of, personal views or whatever. But instead, if somebody makes a claim, you can use an outside source to fact check that claim. If you want to know a little bit more about the person, right, maybe where they came from, their experience, that kind of stuff, you can look into that. So you should be able, in terms of the sources you find, you should recognize the source of the information. If you don't know the author, you should recognize the publication. There should be research to back it up, things like that. You should feel it's legitimate, and it should, help inform you about the web presence you're looking at. So, it can be about providing context about the business, organization, the figure. It can be about, like I said, fact checking the validity of claims. It can maybe provide a little more context on an issue that the web presence is bringing up. As it says on the assignment sheet, though, you should really be cited very briefly. They should be quick moments in your paper to help kind of just provide a little bit more detail. You should not, in this paper, be heavily citing them. If I see any block quotes, especially, that's going to be something that's heavily penalized on the paper, since this is really, the sources are meant just as kind of a little fleshing it out. So opinion pieces don't work, as I said. Encyclopedia entries, so Wikipedia, biography.com, those things aren't acceptable. And I don't want you looking at other web presences for the subject you're looking at. So if you're doing the American Red Cross's Facebook page, I don't want you looking at their website or their Twitter account. These don't count as outside sources. So if you have a question about whether sources work or not, you can let me know. I'm always glad to help out and things like that. You do need to make sure that you cite all of these sources in the body of your paper. So you should have in-text citations for each one, and they should all be listed on your works cited page as well. So when I'm looking at the paper, and there is a rubric up on D2L that gives you an idea about the specifics on the different criteria and breakdown for what I'm looking at. But overall, I'm looking for a couple of key things in this paper. One is that you are analyzing the argument made by the web presence on rhetorical lines. So in other words, you're thinking about how it does or doesn't use the different rhetorical appeals to achieve its purpose with its audience. The paper should be organized thoughtfully, should make sense. So one of the key things there is transitions and topic sentences, right? Making sure that we clearly understand why you're moving us from one point to the next, things like that. The third thing is that you remain objective throughout your analysis, so that you are not engaging with the content, but instead analyzing it and saying, here's what you see at work. And then that you use basic MLA formatting, you follow the formatting guidelines for the assignment, all that kind of stuff. So, the dates are up on D2L, so make sure you are aware in the first week or so, I'm going to ask for your topic paragraph so I can kind of get to that early on and make sure you're on the right track. And then we'll have, you'll have a draft due for the following week. We'll have peer reviews and all that stuff before the final draft is due. So in terms of the assignment itself, the grading breakdown, 10% is that topic paragraph. That is, again, graded solely on completion and following the guidelines. Beyond that, I want you to pick a topic that you're interested in as long as it meets the guidelines. There's a draft that's due, and that's 15% of your grade. That's due for the peer review activity. And then on the final draft, which is 75 points for the project, 50% is content. So you'll notice the biggest thing I look for is the content of your paper. So I'm looking for a strong analysis. It's well organized. It's got good points. There's a good balance of description and analysis throughout the paper. It makes a a clear overarching point that we get to by the end of the paper. So those are the things I'm looking for most heavily. With that is organization, which is 10% of the grade on the paper. That goes back to those topic sentences, transitions, paragraph structure, making sure the reader follows you throughout your analysis. 10% is MLA formatting. That's both the basic format of the paper, making sure you have the page numbers, MLA header, title. It's all formatted correctly. You've got all your in-text citations. You have a correctly formatted works cited page, all that kind of stuff. And then 5% is grammar and mechanics. So I don't grade very heavily on grammar and mechanics because that's stuff that we can always iron out later. But the content's more important. So I want to see the content first. I will say I don't count off for a single missed comma or anything like that. But if there are significant problems, if there are recurring problems throughout your paper and things like that, that will kind of be penalized accordingly. So one thing to note with that especially is that for this first paper, in a rhetorical analysis, you should not use first person at all in your paper. There's never a need in an analysis like this to bring in first person. So you shouldn't be saying I, me, we, I think, things like that. So if you do, you're going to be kind of hit for that when I'm grading for grammar and as well as content and organization. So on the final page of the assignment sheet, you'll notice kind of a brief breakdown of some suggested web presences and a couple guidelines for picking a topic for this paper. So the main thing is that it has to be the profile of a public business organization or figure. Again, this needs to be somebody who's out there in the public sphere. I don't want you picking kind of, a friend or anything like that, somebody more personal that maybe you'd be bringing unwanted attention to, things like that. The second thing is that it needs to be the official page for the business, organization, or public figure. And I say this because, especially on Facebook and places like that, or even on Twitter, there might be fake accounts. There might be user, kind of automatically generated pages. The example I kind of always go to is that I had a student who wanted to do the Pope on Facebook, and the Pope wasn't on Facebook at the time. There was just kind of this automatically generated page. However, the Pope did have a Twitter account, so that was totally fair game. But you want to make sure that you know the person, or organization is running this account before you analyze it. The third thing is to make sure that there's enough content in that 6-month window for you to analyze in your paper. I had a person once who wanted to do Will Smith, and it sounded great, and then he had made 3 posts in the past year, which really wasn't enough content to actually analyze and break down in the paper. So make sure when selecting a topic, it meets those guidelines. As always, if you have questions or you're not sure whether a public page might work, let me know. But like I said, any social media presence is fair game. If there's a web page, it's fair game. So a couple of suggestions I have here, and these are, you by no means have to stick to this list. These are just kind of some ideas to get you going. So businesses like Home Depot, the Burger Stand in Topeka and Lawrence, Ichabod Shop, the campus bookstore, Dillon's, Regal Cinemas, things like that. Public organizations, Washburn University, the American Red Cross, the Kansas City Legislature, sports teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, those are all kind of fair game. Figures, so public figures, I used to have a lot of people, and still have people do, former President Obama, a lot of people do President Trump's Twitter page, which, George Takei's Facebook page is always a great place to go since he's always posting. Vin Diesel, Robert Downey Jr., Katy Perry, right? And these are just kind of a couple examples. So, if you want to select off this list, you can. If you want to go somewhere else, that's totally fine. Ideally, I want you to pick a topic that you're interested in looking at for this paper, whatever that may be. So there's, a lot of other materials on D2L as well to help out with the assignment. Please feel free to post questions in the general issues discussion board if you have any questions about the assignment. Send me an email. If you'd like to talk more about the project or a draft along the way, please let me know. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing what you all choose to work with in terms of your topics and what you come up with on your papers. So I look forward to reading those and seeing exactly what you all have to say.